So today I wanted to do a debt confession video. So this is a little different because I'm not on any sort of debt repayment journey or anything. So I don't have them listed in a specific order or anything like that. And I don't really have any goals to aggressively pay these off. But I was going over our budget right now, and also kind of looking at our 5-year plan and beyond, trying to think about where we want it to be. And so as part of that, I thought it'd be good to take a look at where we are on our debt and go ahead and write that down so that we have a clear picture of it. So it's worth mentioning that we have never made more than $40,000 in income in any year combined, which is partly just like our choices. My husband's a pastor, and so part of it is that choice in jobs, having kids, and cost of childcare and all of that, it's made more sense for me to stay home. And my freelance job that I've been doing for the last 8 years, has been kind of affected a little bit by AI to the point where I feel like it's been harder to get jobs, and I'm not really about that race to the bottom. So I had decided recently to actually step back from the freelance job that I was doing in voiceover, and my husband has picked up a second part-time job in addition to his main job as a pastor. And so in reevaluating all of that, I think it's just worth noting that this is a low income kind of plan, and it has been for a long time. So first, I wanted to talk about student loans, and I don't actually have any student loans. I have a 4-year degree from private college, but my husband has enough student loans for the both of us. So I wanted to talk a little bit briefly, though, about why I don't have student loans, because there's a lot of reasons. It's hard to get through school without any loans, and for me, it was kind of a group effort. So my parents paid a little bit towards my school and my sister's school every year, about $3,000 to $4,000 per year, and that. And then the final year that I was in school, my older sister actually gave up her $3,000 to $4,000 from my parents because she was going to have to take out student loans anyway. And she said, this way only one of us will have to bother applying. So between that, and then I got a lot of scholarships, academic scholarships and extracurricular scholarships, and then a few that I applied for from like my school, or there was a gas station one. I had a church matching grant, and like an alumni scholarship since my mom went to the same school. There was just a lot of little things that added up. I worked in high school some and saved some of that money. It was only about $2,000 towards school, but I saved some of that. In addition to that, I worked over the summers, and I also did, work, study, and I had a part-time job for a little while, but it was just kind of too much with all the extracurriculars I was required to be in for scholarships and stuff. It was too much for me, so I only did that a semester. But I also was able to take 5 or 6 CLEP tests, and I don't know if those are still a thing, but that allowed me to pay like $100 and take a test for a class that then I got the credits for. And it wasn't that hard. I did have to study for them, but it wasn't ridiculously hard, and I took 5 or 6 of them. And since my college accepted them, we didn't have AP classes in my high school. So CLEP test was what I did instead. And I think I'd never heard of anybody else really doing them. So it was really beneficial for me, if that's even still a thing. I don't know. My point is that it was kind of a group effort. And so I'm going to start with Matthew's student loans. And I have more to say about that, but I'm going to start with Matthew's student loans and writing these down here. So his first student loan is on the income-based repayment plan, and that is $3,483.38. The interest rate is 5.35%, and the payment is currently 0. And that's because we're low income and we have 3 kids, so the payments are not high on these. Now, the next ones are all on the pay plan, I don't remember what PAY stands for, but it's the pay plan. And that, as I understand it, is going away soon. And I think we'll still have the option to switch to the IBR plan for all of those, which is what we'll probably do. And then the other one is the RAP plan. And I think all things equal, they'd kind of come out about the same for us financially, but the IBR would be lower payments on a regular basis than the RAP. And I know some people are really against like student loan forgiveness and pursuing the student loan forgiveness. I don't have a problem with it. So I think it's worth mentioning that when my husband signed up for these loans, forgiveness was always on the table. It was part of the agreement that if your degree doesn't pay enough to cover the cost of the standard repayment plan, then you would have an option to be on the income-based repayment plans, and you could pursue forgiveness after 20 or 25 years. So the pay plan would have been 20 years. We would have had 13 years left. The IBR will be 17 years if we were on the RAP plan. Oh, the total is like 30 years, so it's like whatever that would be to be up to 30 years. But yeah, additionally, I think that I know it seems unfair. And as somebody who did hustle to try and avoid student loans, because my parents had been part of the whole Dave Ramsey thing, which I don't subscribe to Dave Ramsey. I do not like Dave Ramsey. I think he's kind of an awful person. But that doesn't mean, despite the fact that he can't see his own privilege in things and that he's really aggressively rude and unempathetic, I think that he does have some things that are not totally wrong. A lot of his advice is outdated and short-sighted, but there's plenty of decent advice in there too. So they had just gone through that whole thing. So it was really important to them that we didn't get school debt. So I married into it instead. Yay. But anyway, I think on a larger scale too, income-based repayment plans are important, especially for if we look beyond just our individual person. For like rural communities, we live in a more rural setting. If you don't have this sort of incentive, these rural towns are just getting smaller and smaller. People are forced to move away because they can't accept the jobs that are required for these positions, like doctors, pastors, teachers, all of these different positions that really required an education. You can't have them. So you have either really uneducated people, or you have hospitals and places closing because they have to go to cities in order to do these things. So income-based repayment allows for people to not worry as much about that, and then rural people can afford to pay these people a little bit less because they can be on an income-based repayment plan, and it doesn't have to set them back so much so that they can't survive. So I think I just want to make that note that they are important. But yeah, okay, so let me go through these really quick. He has a loan for $4,899.10 at a 4.25% interest rate with a zero payment. $7,079.65 at 6.55% for zero payment. And $5,871.81 at 3.15% with a zero payment. 3398 point, I think that's a 919 at 6.55% at a zero payment. 6796.41 at 6.55% for a zero payment. 7 is 6708.60 at 6.55% for zero payment. And 2214 point, I think that's a 96. I wrote this out before just so it'd be quicker to find at a zero payment 8128.57, 6.55%, zero payment 10, let's see, 14,270.07 at 5.16%, zero payment 15,963.77, 5.96%, zero. 13,450 at 5.59% for a zero payment. Okay, so that's all of the loans that he still has currently for student loans. And I think it's worth mentioning too, I say that phrase way too much, that these are simple interest loans. So they're not compounding. Now, when we switch, sometimes that can be a compounding or a capitalizing, Sometimes switching payment plans can be a capitalizing event. So when we switch from the pay to the IBR or the RAP, depending on what's available, it is possible that they'll count that as a capitalizing event, which would be really unfortunate for us. But we have about $17,000 is interest. And then the total I have here is for just the student loans. I'll write it over here. Well, yeah, I'll write it over here. Is 92,265 for the student loans. And I did want to mention what we've paid off because I think it's important to kind of celebrate that too. I couldn't find exact numbers for everything, but I did some of them. So, I did all of them. I guessed at a couple of them a little bit. So this one was 2,989 that we paid off, and it was a 6.55% interest rate. This one was about $6,000 plus a little interest. I don't know how much interest it was. It could have been more than that, but 6.8%. They didn't actually have the number on the servicer because this was before it transferred servicers once. And we paid off a 4,794 that was at 5% and a approximately $10,000 including interest at 11%. So this was also a variable interest rate. So with this one here, these two down here were not going to be eligible for forgiveness at any point. These two were, but we at the time were hustling a little bit more. This was early on that we did some of these. This one was not going to be forgiven, so we did this one recently. This one was actually a private loan. So my parents, obviously I mentioned they did the Dave Ramsey thing. They had different views on debt than Matthew's parents did. They view debt more as a tool, and it's neither here nor there, but because of job situations and other siblings that were going to school at the time, Matthew, in order to cover the cost of one of his school years, they had him take out, his parents encouraged him to take out this loan that was a private loan in order to pay for his school tuition that year, because they didn't feel they could afford it. And that they assured him that because it was a private loan and they felt really bad that he was going to have to take that out, that they would pay it off. And they paid on it for a while. And then shortly after we got married, they missed, I think, 2 payments. And so we said, never mind here, you send us the check for it and we'll pay it from our account just to make sure it gets paid. And so they did send the check for about 3 months, and then it stopped. And when Matthew mentioned it, they said they had never agreed to pay it. So we hustled. So we had started paying on this one, and then we changed course and hustled on this one to get that one paid off, because our understanding had been that they were going to pay that one off. This is predatory. Variable. It had started at like a 9% interest rate, and by the time he wasn't even out of his master's program, he was in his graduate program, and he'd gone straight to a graduate program after college, and this had already gone up from 9% to 11% by the time we finished paying it off in like the first year or two of our marriage. And at that time we were only making, I don't even think we had passed $30,000 at that time. And we were paying on that loan really aggressively. We also did, during our early years, we paid a few classes out of pocket. So I want to say it was probably somewhere around 5 classes that we paid for out of pocket. So this is not even like the total amount that we paid. Obviously there's other expenses on top of that for like board and stuff that I'm sure paid some stuff for that. But even just like tuition for classes, I graduated a semester early in order to kind of keep costs low. And like I said, I took some summer classes, and we paid the last semester that I was in college. I did it from a distance, and we paid it out of pocket. And then Matthew, in order to finish his graduate degree earlier, did some summer classes that we paid for out of pocket too. So this is not the total amount that we paid, but it's there. So at this time, we are not paying anything on right now, all of the student loans. And you can make arguments for why that's good or bad. By my calculations, the tax bomb at the end of all of this should be somewhere in the $25,000 to $40,000 range. So instead, we are working on putting aside money from our investments. If we were to try and pay it off in 10 years on the standard payment plan, which I understand there's quicker ways than going with the standard payment plan. If you're on income based, if you wanted to pay it off, you wouldn't just do the standard payment. You'd start with the high interest ones and really target those. So you pay the interest and then pay it off and do it that way. But anyway, point being, if we were going to pay it off with the standard plan, it'd be like $950 a month to pay it off in 10 years. So it makes more sense just from a purely financial standpoint to wait, see how things play out with, legislation and all of that, and be putting away as much as we can in that kind of equivalent range into our retirement accounts. We have Roth IRAs, and the Roth IRAs, you could pull out any of your contributions without any penalty. So as long as we're kind of keeping up with it, and that's compounding interest, where this is simple interest, as long as we're kind of keeping up with that, it should work out okay. So that's kind of the tentative plan. Could change, but that's where we are for student loans. Next, this is the stuff that matters a little bit more. I think. I mean, it's not that doesn't matter. That's just kind of have an idea for how we're going to take care of it. And if it doesn't work out, we will adjust. And it's not like we're just not doing anything. We're still putting money aside. It's just we're putting it into our Roths and investing it in the meantime. And as long as we're keeping up with the interest, then we could put it right back onto the student loans, and it will basically put us back where we started. So for the car, we have $2,517.60. Now, the interest rate on this one is 3.99%, and the payment is $318.91. This was our very first, we've been married for 11 years. This was our very first car payment that we'd ever had. And I don't think it's like a rite of passage or anything that you have to have one. We hadn't driven anything newer than a 2003. And then in I want to say 2022, we decided we were tired of surprise bills, and we would take the hit of paying on a monthly basis to try and do some research and find something that was solid, that we could pay off relatively quickly, and hopefully keep for many years after that. I mean, I'm going to guess 5 at least after we paid it off. But so we're still taking it in for maintenance and everything. So we spent way more on this than I think a lot of people would be comfortable with who are this low income. But we did save up, and so we didn't have to take out a massive loan. I think it was maybe $20,000. And that's still massive when your income is only $40,000. But we did have some of the money. We could have paid more on it, but we don't want our accounts getting too low. And this 3.99% interest rate. So initially it was 8.99, and we got it from Carvana. So 1 month, which we had tried to get it from dealerships, and this car that we had decided on after a lot of research, we had tried 2 different times to buy it from a dealership, and somebody came and snatched it up because we were from a distance trying to get all the paperwork in and everything. So it didn't work out to buy it from a dealership. So we finally, because our van was breaking down, we bought it from Carvana, and at an 8.99% interest rate. And then we, the month after, which was the earliest you could refinance, we refinanced for a 3.99% interest rate. And at the time, our savings account was paying, I want to say 4.5%. So I was like, I am not putting extra on this car when my savings account is outpacing the interest rate. So instead, any extra that I would have put towards the car loan, I put into the savings account and left it there. So about 2 months ago, our savings account interest rate dropped. It had been dropping gradually, but it dropped below this 3.99% a couple months ago. And so I took $8,000 and put that huge chunk towards this. And so that brought this down significantly. And I could pay this off. It would have our accounts lower than I would prefer. So I decided it'll cost about $100 in interest to just make the payment until the end of this loan. And so I feel comfortable with paying an extra $100 on this to not put my accounts so low that I feel uncomfortable. So that's the story of the car. And you could say that that's not a justifiable reason for getting a car. I feel pretty happy with it. It was a 6-year loan. It's been maybe 3 years since we bought it. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And it's still running great. We've only had one. The highest repair we've had was $500, and it was once. Everything else has just been regular maintenance for about $20 to $40. It hasn't been expensive, and we've just been trying to keep on top of any maintenance. It's a hybrid. So we save at minimum, we save $40 a month in gas over our last vehicle. Probably the last several vehicles, but yeah. So even just that, if you take this and then subtract out $40, it made sense for us. We saved up a lot so that it wasn't really ridiculous, and it was a calculated decision. You could argue that it's not a need, and you're right, it's not. But we're happy with it. We're comfortable with it, and it's going to be paid off in less than a year just by following this regular payment. Next is our mortgage. So $73,835.19 at you're going to be blown away, 2.625% interest rate. And the payment, it actually just went up. So this is the highest it's been. $735.91. So obviously, I don't know if you could tell, that was a good financial decision. I know if you're all about that cash, then you might not like that, but that was an excellent financial decision for us. Even just this house that we live in right now, we live in a house in a neighborhood of very similar houses. They're all like the same. It doesn't matter. They're all like the same basically. And houses in our area are renting from anywhere from $1,000, maybe $900. I could see maybe a $900 to $1,200. So this is even just like locking in this price. This is excellent for us to be able to live. It's 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Excellent. We did buy a house in the last place we lived, and we expected to be there for like 5 years or something. Well, the pandemic hit, our job fell through. I was still freelancing. That didn't fall through at the time, but Matthew's job fell through, and we were moved pretty quickly. So we only stayed in our last house for 1.5 years, and we had a pretty good interest rate. I want to say 4.5 or something like that. And it was a cheap house. It was a cheap area. So it was like, we bought it for $55,000, I think, and we sold it for $73,000. But we did put some work into it because we expected to be there longer. And the kitchen was unusable when we moved in. So we did put a lot of DIY work in. So I don't know that we actually made our money out, but it wasn't a huge loss, and we definitely learned a lot doing it. So that was good. But then it was a total coincidence that we got. I mean, I think it was a God thing, but it was crazy that we were able to get this house at this rate, at this price, because it was in the pandemic, and interest rates had just plummeted, and the prices of the houses had not crept up yet. So we locked in an exceptional terms for this house. And it was purely timing. So that's where the mortgage is. That's our fun little story about the mortgage. Credit cards. So I debated whether or not to bother with credit cards on here because we pay our credit cards off every month. But I decided to go ahead and put them in anyway. Partly because, let's see, this first one is a store credit card. I don't need to list all of them. And it's like a home improvement store. It currently has a balance of 0. But I wanted to put the interest rate on this. And I couldn't find the interest rate for all of them. But the interest rate for this is 31.99%. That is so predatory. Anyway, so the payment is 0 because there's no balance on it. And we get 5% back. So we only use it for home improvement purchases, and we only use it when we have the money in the bank. And I just wanted to put that because it's like the 5% back is nothing. If you miss even one payment on a tiny amount, you've lost all the earnings for the 5% back. So this is the one card I don't have on auto pay, and maybe I should. But I check all of the cards anyway to make sure they get paid off every month because it's my own mental health quirk. Anyway. So our daily spending card has a balance of $1,001.34. And that's not the statement balance, that's the total balance. The interest rate is 29.24%. Again, very predatory. The minimum payment is $25, and it gets 2% back. This one actually has on it, I had to take a little bit out of our emergency fund because one of my children flushed several toys down the toilet when we were watching a movie. And, I know he needs to be supervised. I should have had the bathroom door locked. I didn't, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. And we were just in the other room. He's mostly independent with the potty. But anyway, we called the plumber after we tried to get it out, and we couldn't get it out, and we didn't even know what he had flushed down there. Plumber came in, tried to get it out, got out one thing, and then found out there was still something else down there. So he ended up saying, he'd been working on it for several hours, and he said, well, I can keep working on it, and I might end up breaking the toilet doing it, or I could just go ahead and replace the toilet. Yeah, so we said, let's go ahead and replace the toilet, and it was like an $800 charge for 1 hour of TV time or whatever we got out of it. So that was very depressing. But anyway, so I didn't have to take the whole thing out of our emergency fund, but I took a couple $100 out, and that will get paid off automatically, in a day or two, a couple days. And then it'll leave just whatever we racked up this month on there. But it automatically pays the full balance of the statement. So that's our daily use one, and we get 2% back. And so I try and funnel as much as I can through these cashback credit cards. And I think they pay me about $50 a month, maybe, in cash back. So the next one is our online. And so this only works for online purchases. And it has a balance of 349.34. I could not find the interest rate on this, which I think is also a problem. I'm sure it's there somewhere. I just couldn't find it on the statement or anything. But it did have the penalty interest rate, so I'll put that. Okay, and the minimum payment for that is $25. And this one gets, for online purchases, 3% back. So anytime we have to order anything from any store online, we use that card. And then we pay it off immediately. Okay. The next one is just another random credit card, and that has a $0 balance. Let's see. The interest rate is 27.24%. Zero payment, and it has random cashback amounts. And then we have another credit card that has $60.84 on it. 24.99% and $40 minimum, and it is also random. I like switched from cursive to manuscript. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then here's another one we have, which has a $0 balance, and this actually has the lowest interest rate. And this one I'm going to put changed here. They changed their reward structure. It is no longer useful to us, so we no longer put anything on it. I could cancel it, but I didn't want to affect our credit score at all, so I didn't cancel it. I might do it anyway. I don't know. It's not our oldest credit card or anything, so. And then this is our grocery credit card that we use to buy our groceries. 97. And the minimum payment is 41 for some reason. And that gets 5% back on our groceries up to a certain amount. So, yeah. That one, yeah, so that's our credit cards. And I added this up the other day. And you can tell me if I added wrong, but 170,494.28. So that's our total. Theoretically, the student loan debt will go away and be left with a tax bomb in its place. So that's worth mentioning. Also, the car loan will be gone in 9 or 10 months. I think about 9 months. The mortgage I'm gonna hang on to. We do want to move just outside of town and buy kind of hopefully an equivalent value property. Interest rates are higher now, so obviously any equity we've built up would just basically go straight for the down payment. But we would like to have a little bit of acreage just outside of town. So that's something we're thinking about doing in the next 5 years. Probably not till the oldest is around middle school age. Yeah, I think that's everything. I feel pretty good about this. We're working on really focusing on getting our investments. Right now we've just upped it to $400 a month towards our Roths, and I feel pretty comfortable with that. But in order to just break even kind of on where we are with the growth of the student loan debt, we're trying to keep up with that and be really consistent about that. We have not always been really consistent with the Roths, but we have kept up mostly with the interest for our contributions. So those are some of our goals that we're working towards. And like I said, I don't have huge plans to pay off everything, but most of this is going to be paid off automatically. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, not helpful for anyone, but I think it's good for everyone to know where they stand. And if you're on a debt payoff journey, I think that's great. Go for it. I find these sorts of things really encouraging for me to just be thinking about it and how I want to go about it. obviously my goal had been, not to get into much debt. I think everybody starts from a different place though. And for me, it doesn't matter if I did everything right with college. I still ended up, I picked somebody who had student loan debt. So you never really know where you're going to be and why, but just working with what you have and where you're at. As far as the income goes, I'm comfortable with the income between the new job and the old job that Matthew has. I still have little kids at home, so I'm watching them most of the time, but I am working on a side hustle with Matthew that we started this year that I'm hoping to grow over the coming years a little bit. I don't need anything like crazy, but I am hoping to grow that into something to kind of replace what I was doing with voiceover. So that's my plans, that's my hopes, that's my goals. So if you're on a similar journey, planning, experiment, good luck to you, best wishes, and I'll see you in the next one.